Companies die all the time, often because of their founders.
Because it's total crap.
Because we're so successful around the world.
This is true about life and true about a business.
But sometimes, it's the founders who die because of their company. So we've selected the 6 deadliest startup inventions of all time, starting of course with the AVE Mizar.
The Mizar air car was conceived by engineers...
Named after the Mizar star in the Big Dipper, often used to test how good your eyesight is. Henry Smolisky and Harold Drape graduated from the Northrop Institute of Technology's Aeronautical Engineering School. With a whole new set of engineering skills, they set out to build this.
With great pride, Mizar Air Car Incorporated presents the vehicle of the future.
If it looks like a car, with some wings attached behind it, that's because that's exactly what it is. This is a car attached to the rear part of a Cessna Skymaster. Now, the coolest innovation was that you could potentially attach the AVE Mizar to any vehicle, and somehow they chose a Ford Pinto for their first prototype. To be fair with the Ford Pinto, they needed a light car, and the Pinto was the lightest car that they could find. At 2,000 to 2,200 pounds, or 900 to 1,000 kilograms, it was too heavy for the Continental IO360C 210 horsepower rear engine and the Skymaster wingspan to lift. In fact, you actually needed both the car and the plane engines working to get up to speed and take off. Now, this thing was expected to cost between $18,000 and $29,000 USD, or between $120,000 and $180,000 in today's money, so it's like a Cybertruck. Anyway, on August 26th, while taking off from Camarillo Airport in California, they were running a test. The right wing strut, the mounting attachment failed, leaving the wings basically hanging. Still, the test pilot Charles Red Janice figured that if he didn't turn, he might live, and he did. He landed on a bean field and drove the Pinto back to the airport pretty much unharmed. A couple of weeks later, for a second test flight, Brett wasn't available, or, he was just being smart and staying away from this company. So the founders took over, and the exact same thing happened. The strut failed, but Smolinski, who was at the controls, steering wheel, whatever, still tried turning the aircraft, which caused them to crash, killing them both. Number 5 on the list is Mike Hughes, not related to Howard Hughes in case you were wondering. He's partly famous for breaking the Guinness World Record for the longest limousine jump in 2002.
Michael may not be the guy you want to hire to drive you to prom.
But what he's really known for is for his desire to prove that Earth was flat by building a steam rocket to go to outer space, photograph the flat disk of our planet, and then come back.
They started all this space crap in the late 40s and all the way through the 50s. They're priming people, okay? They would do a fake attack through holographic images in the sky, which they can do.
After he died though, Darren Schuster, his PR manager, said that Hughes wasn't really a flat earther. He had tried to raise money on Kickstarter for his first rocket in 2016, but only raised $310 out of the $150,000 that he needed.
This video is to start an actually Kickstarter campaign.
So he had to think outside the box. He drastically cut the cost of the design, skipped most tests, and went to flat earthers to race, which actually kind of worked. 2018, he made his first rocket flight and survived, and this cool band put him in their music video. In February 2020, after a couple of delays, he tried again. This time though, the parachute deployed early, leaving his rocket to hit the gravity of Earth's flat frisbee without slowing down.
We're supposed to come to the end of our lives, not with anything left, but everything exhausted.
There's still something cool about dying in a rocket pursuing space. It's much better than dying in a device that makes you look like a dork. Enter Segway. The official inventor of Segway is Dean Kamen, an American serial inventor who's written over 1,000 patents. Now, the first patent for self-balanced transportation dates back to February 93 for the iBot, a self-balancing wheelchair, and the reason why Apple had to get creative with its assistant's name. But Segway, as we know it, actually started in 1999, and the Segway PT launched in 2001. You notice that a pretty famous bubble burst between these two dates, and when they went to manufacturing, they were expecting to sell 50 to 100,000 units per year, but by 2003, they had only sold 6,000. It was all downhill from there. Product recalls, bad batteries, slow charging, some patents expired, but people still had faith in Segway, and in a mission to realize Segway's potential, Jimmy Heselden, OBE, a British entrepreneur, acquired the company in 2009. Now, on a fine morning in September 2010, he was walking his dog around his estate in Weatherby while riding his Segway, and he fell from a 42 feet, 14-meter cliff and died. Not technically the inventor, but most definitely his company and his product. Speaking of inventions, how are you even supposed to launch a product in this day and age if snatching a decent domain requires you to get creative, and I mean really creative. Well, a single word domain doesn't have to be a pipe dream anymore, thanks to our sponsors for today's video, the guys from .tech. Why would you want to put a hyphen or an HQ or a NAP or some crazy suffix at the end of your company name if you can instead just append a .tech domain, which just organically creates a tech connection for your customers? Over 500 tech startups worldwide that have raised over $5 billion in funding use .tech domains for their websites. Companies like Nothing.tech, Aurora.tech, and 1x.tech. The guys from .tech have not only opened a 50% discount for you guys, but we also partnered with them this year to pick one .tech company every month for free office hours with my team and I. Sign up for the office hours with the link in the description. Thanks .tech for sponsoring today's video.
Ah, mamma mia!
Now, one could argue that the next story is a bit of a karma police, because this is Thomas Midgley, an American mechanical and chemical engineer, and we owe him two of the worst inventions in history. Now, the first one was in December 1921 while he was working for General Motors. They were working on components to add to gasoline to reduce engine knocking in combustion engines. Knocking is when fuel ignites prematurely in the cylinders,
producing an audible banging noise.
And they had a breakthrough. They discovered tellurium, which worked to help on knocking, but created this chemical reaction in the human body that makes you smell like, I quote, satanic garlic.
What, do you smell something?
Do I smell something? What am I, hard of smelling? Of course I smell something.
What is it?
I think it's BO.
Just inhaling some of this stuff might make you smell like garlic for months.
Still smells!
So after discarding that idea, they landed on the tetratylide, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. And this new compound helped with knocking and improved. It made gasoline higher octane. The problem is that they started advertising this thing as ethyl,
Mixed in proper proportions with gasoline, made an ideal anti-knock fuel.
conveniently leaving out the fact that lead was part of it. And for over 5 years, over 10 people died in the factories that were making this compound because of lead poisoning. We knew lead was poisonous, and when the deaths in the factory started getting some press attention, Midgley went as far as doing a press conference where he rubbed the thing in his hands and inhaled its vapor just to prove that it was safe. Now, you would think that this was enough to kill him, but it didn't. In his next endeavor, he helped develop Freon, which was a refrigerant gas designed to replace propane or ammonia, which were used prior to that in refrigerators. Now, Freon is a CFC, a chlorofluorocarbon. Remember those from back in the 90s?
CFCs are used in automobile air conditioners, home insulation, and in plastic cups.
It worked for refrigeration, and people started using that for asthma inhalers and from some other aerosol products, and eventually it gave us this.
Recently, scientists discovered a weak spot in the ozone layer over Antarctica.
There's already a big hole in the ozone layer over Antarctica. The purple area shows where the ozone is severely depleted.
But that didn't kill him either. So in 1940, he contracted polio, which left him severely disabled, but also didn't kill him. And being the inventor that he was, he designed a system of ropes and pulleys to be able to get out of bed, which worked. But in 1944, when he was 55, he became entangled in his contraption and he died of strangulation. Now, he did leave us with leaded fuel for another 50 years and that hole in the ozone layer, so thanks for nothing. Fun fact, there's a movie about him coming up, written apparently by the same screenwriter behind The Wolf of Wall Street. Next on the list is Thomas Andrews, British businessman, shipbuilder, and naval architect who designed this.
The Titanic represents the highest attainment in naval architecture.
Now, we know that story, but let me give you some fun facts about this guy. He started working at Harland & Wolff, the company that built Titanic, in an apprenticeship in 1901. He worked across many departments until he finally made it to managing director and overseeing the design of a few ships. This is one of them, and it's still around. He then went on to design 3 ships for a company called White Star Line, RMS Olympic, RMS Titanic, and RMS Britannic. This scene is reportedly true. It's based on a report from a steward called John Stewart. Not kidding. And he said,
Won't you even make a try for it?
and then he didn't say anything. But another account says that this is incorrect. One of those accounts says that he was a hero. He helped people get into boats, and he threw deck chairs to people who were floating and didn't have life vests so that they could float and, when they didn't fit on the same door. But another account says that he went to find Theoden King at the bridge. They both put on their life belts and jumped overboard. Now, whichever story from Titanic geeks you choose to believe, Mr. Andrews gave us the winner of today's list. No other than Stockton Rush. Wait, before you go, you must know this story, of course, the Logitech remote, how deep sea implosions work. But what you may not know is who this guy is, or, who he was. First of all, his name is Richard Stockton Rush III, though it's much cooler to use just your 2 surnames because they come from your great, many greats grandparents, Richard Stockton and Benjamin Rush, whose signatures, both of them, you can find here. But also his great-great-great-grand-in-laws is a thing, were some of the richest people who died in the Titanic, and they're actually in the movie. That's them, and that's sad and also a little creepy. But going back to the business side of things, did you know that there's a company that has the rights to the Titanic wreckage? The Titanic wreckage is in international waters. When it first sank, based on maritime and admiral law, it belonged to its original owner, the White Star Line. But the company was struggling. In 1934, go watch a video about a certain recession that happened around that time. And then by 1949, it had been fully merged, acquired by a company called Cunard Line, which technically still owns the wreckage, though nobody knew where it actually was. Since they made no efforts to recover the wreckage, maybe because it was 4 kilometers underwater, technically the wreckage would be considered abandoned. So then in 1985, Robert Ballard in the joint US-French expedition finally found it, but didn't claim it or didn't get any artifacts from it, which literally was passing on $1 million opportunity. And then a company called Titanic Ventures in 1987 didn't miss on it. So they started getting stuff out, eventually renamed the company to RMS Titanic Inc. And finally, a US federal court determined that based on the law of fines, which is very much still a thing, they are the salvor in possession of the Titanic wreckage. That means that they don't own it, but they get to manage its artifacts and charge money for you to go see their exhibitions. Now, you might have read about the new $50 million lawsuit against Oceangate. The question is, if this waiver that everybody who died signed will be enough to hold back the lawsuit. Now, the company's of course bust. It probably doesn't have many assets left, but if the plaintiffs of the lawsuit are really sour, they could end up going after the founder. No, wait. I mean, after the other execs or even after the founder's family. As for me, I'm gonna stick to building software for now, at least until our Slidebean AI becomes sentient. We'll see you in the next one.